You know, if you're breathing, you've probably faced a moment where you just felt completely stuck. You look ahead, and right there in front of you is this massive, heavy, seemingly impassable challenge. It literally feels like a brick wall. So today we're exploring a really powerful devotional text that looks exactly at how we navigate those moments. We're going to unpack how trusting a higher strategy, even when it makes absolutely zero sense to our natural minds, is actually often the very key to your breakthrough. So what walls are standing in your life right now? I want you to really think about that for a second. Are you facing a difficult relationship that just feels locked tight and unmoving? Maybe it's mounting financial pressures that seem way too high to climb over. Or, hey, maybe you have a dream, a calling, that looks completely impossible from where you're standing today. Look, we all have our walls, and the source text we're analyzing today uses one of the most famous historical examples of an impossible wall to show us exactly how to bring it down. We're looking at the biblical account of Jericho. Joshua chapter 6, verse 1 tells us, "Now Jericho was securely shut up, none went out and none came in." Talk about the ultimate example of a hopeless situation, right? It was a literal fortress. But here's the totally fascinating part. Before the Israelites even drew a single sword, God had already promised Joshua total victory over the city, its king, and its mighty men of valor. The victory was completely assured before the battle even began. The only real question was how they were going to fight it. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the stark contrast between how we naturally want to fight and how God actually asks us to fight. When we face a giant wall, human strategy screams at us to rely on clever plans. We want to rush in, we want to argue, we just want to force the door open, right? But God's strategy, as outlined in this text, is the exact opposite. It requires simple obedience, silence, and quiet trust. God's power doesn't depend on our strength or our frantic planning at all. He often just asks for steady obedience, even when it feels incredibly strange or agonizingly slow. Just consider the actual instructions God gave to Joshua here. This is, without a doubt, one of the most bizarre, counterintuitive military strategies ever recorded. March around the city once a day for 6 days, in complete silence. Have 7 priests carry ram's horns in front of the Ark of the Covenant. Then on the 7th day, march around 7 times, and then shout. For 6 long days, the Israelites walked in utter silence. No fighting, no rushing around. Just carrying the ark to remind them of God's presence, walking in quiet trust day after day. Joshua and the people didn't try to tweak or improve on these instructions. They just listened and followed step by step.
And you know, this brilliantly illustrates a much broader pattern we see all throughout the Bible. God consistently honors those who follow His directions, even when it completely defies human logic or involves massive risk. Think about Gideon. He was told to send most of his massive army home, leaving just 300 men holding trumpets and clay jars to face this vast, heavily armed enemy force. Or think of Peter, stepping out of a perfectly good boat onto stormy waters at Jesus' call, literally walking before the calm ever appeared. In all these cases, it's radical obedience that unlocks the miraculous.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 1, Modern-Day Jericho Victories, Obedience in Action.
Because this isn't just ancient history, folks. This ancient strategy absolutely still works today. Our source text highlights 3 modern examples where contemporary leaders faced their own massive walls and saw incredible breakthroughs through obedience. First up, we have Bertie Lawrence, a businessman in waste management. His wall? Near bankruptcy. His counterintuitive act of obedience? He legally transferred 51% ownership of his company to God, putting structural accountability in place. What looked like the absolute end became a turning point for fresh life and provision. Then there's Ken Eldredge in the tech industry. As he built multi-million-dollar startups, his obedience was consistently choosing biblical values over standard, cutthroat industry norms, and that led to lasting kingdom influence. Finally, Ben Spell. He had 0 industry experience but felt this clear call to start a meat company. He took a small step of faith and built a highly successful, faith-filled business.
But hey, it's not just CEOs. It's everyday believers too. Anastasia in Eurasia faced the wall of a divided life. Her obedience was ending an unhealthy relationship and making things right with her family. And despite immediate pushback, God gave her peace and a totally new purpose. Then there's an anonymous professional who turned down a highly lucrative promotion simply because it would compromise her time with family and church. She chose obedience over security, and guess what? Better aligned opportunities soon followed. And a homeowner facing mounting medical bills just kept donating to help others in their community. Their faithful marching resulted in surprising financial support that allowed them to stay in their home. God absolutely still moves through steady trust.
This brings us to Section 2, Grace Inside the Rubble, Total Commitment.
Now, the story of Jericho definitely carries a serious side. It was the total destruction of a city as a judgment on its wickedness. But woven right into the very center of that judgment is this breathtaking picture of God's mercy. Let's look at Rahab. She was a harlot, an outsider living in the walls of the doomed city. But because she had hidden the Israelite spies and put her trust in the God of Israel, she was shown incredible mercy. She placed a scarlet cord in her window as a sign of faith. And when those massive walls fell flat, her house stood, her family was spared. What this beautifully shows us is that God's kindness is available to absolutely anyone who turns to Him, regardless of their past. In fact, Rahab was brought in and eventually became part of the direct family lineage of Jesus Christ. How amazing is that?
But alongside that amazing grace came a very strict condition for the Israelites. Joshua warns the people that they could not take any of the devoted things for themselves. All the silver, gold, bronze, and iron were consecrated entirely to the Lord. Everything had to be given to Him. And this teaches us a really profound lesson about total commitment. You see, partial obedience, or holding back a little piece of what belongs to God just for ourselves, can actually hinder the blessing He wants to give us. Our hearts have to be fully in it, no holding back.
Ultimately, the marching, the silence, the trumpets, and that final shout all point to a much greater truth for us today. We aren't fighting physical battles with swords and literal stone walls anymore, right? Today, we are engaged in spiritual warfare. Our weapons are mighty through God for pulling down strongholds, the strongholds of fear, of doubt, of addiction, of broken relationships, and deep discouragement. God is still calling you to trust Him, to keep walking faithfully even when nothing seems to change, and to lift a shout of praise when He says the time has come. The presence of the Lord, pictured back then by the ark, is what makes all the difference, and Jesus promises to be with us always.
The source material closes with a truly beautiful prayer, and I want to read this quote with you right now. Heavenly Father, thank you for the story of Jericho that reminds us you fight our battles when we trust and obey you. Give us patience for the daily marches and courage for the moments when you call us to shout in faith. May that encourage every single person going through this explainer who is facing high walls today, whether that's in your family, your work, your health, or your faith.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, I have a final question for you. If you are believing God for a breakthrough, will you hit follow to join us for these daily devotional explainers? And really think about this. Who will you share this with to help them conquer their own Jericho today? The walls in front of you might look completely impossible right now, but are you prepared to keep marching in quiet trust so that when your seventh day arrives, you are ready to boldly shout in faith? Keep marching, keep trusting, and we'll see you next time.